Do you ever stop to think about what's in your food? Most of us don't, especially as something as natural and bare as corn or soybeans. What if we told you that even something that grows straight out of the ground can have the same health implications as processed food, and sometimes even more, and even contribute to the processed food's health problems?
Monsanto is at the heart of this controversial issue. Monsanto is a publicly traded American multinational agricultural biotechnology corporation headquartered in St. Louis, Missouri. And it operates in 66 countries with a reported 404 facilities. In the U.S. alone, Monsanto operates in 146 facilities in 33 states, including Tennessee. It's the leading producer of genetically engineered seeds and the herbicide known as Roundup.
Early on, however, Monsanto was a major producer of plastics such as polystyrene and synthetic fibers. Monsanto has also had several scientific achievements, such as research on catalytic asymmetric hydrogenation, which aids in the generation of synthetic molecules, and being the first company to mass produce LEDs. The company also formerly manufactured controversial products such as insecticide DDT, PCBs, and Agent Orange in the Vietnam War. The company's business model involves heavily investing in research and development and then recouping the expenses through use of enforcement of biological patents, which is conflicted with customary practices of farmers to save, reuse, share, and develop plant varieties. Monsanto is being criticized as being a biopirate and a threat to biodiversity. Between its role in changes in agriculture, involving litigation and seed commercialization, its current and former products, its lobbying of government agencies, and history as a chemical company, Monsanto has been known to be a controversial company. The following is an outline of practices by the company that could be deemed as unethical. We seek to show exactly how Monsanto is unethical or ethical in their actions, and what you as an American citizen and consumer can do about the situation.
Monsanto mostly deals with agriculture now. They invest a lot of time and money in research and development so that they can help create the best seed possible for farmers. They are committed to research in various agricultural crops. Some of the main seed that Monsanto produces are corn, soybeans, sugar beets, cotton, canola, and alfalfa.
Monsanto also produces corn, potatoes, cotton, soybeans that can synthesize their own insecticide. Other GM crops that are being developed to resist drought using genes from organisms such as moss and yeast.
Monsanto is known for providing farmers with the newest technologies, which helps them become more profitable for every acre of land that they use. Their mission is to help farmers find the latest seeds and technologies while using the fewest amounts of inputs possible. So how exactly has Monsanto altered the seeds, and what are they supposed to do? Well, when it comes to their seeds, Monsanto offers corn farmers as well as soybean farmers the ability to control weeds and pests with a single seed through a process known as trait stacking. This is one of the main things that Monsanto prides itself on. The seeds are cloned and have genes added and modified to make them stronger and more resistant to the seed and herbicide. They actually developed the herbicide known as Roundup, and their corn and soybeans are specifically modified to be able to resist the Roundup. This is what allows farmers to spray for weeds without killing their crops. This means that the genetically modified seed that grow into plants can live in extremely toxic environments. And recently there's been some concern that these traits can cross over into unwanted weeds. And in the past few years, superweeds have started to pop up in farms across the nation. One of the most common genetic modifications of animals is injecting recombinant bovine growth hormone, which cows naturally produce in small amounts, into lactating cows to sustain present mammary cells, producing more milk. A 2007 USDA dairy survey estimated that the bovine growth hormone was used about 12.5% of operations and in 17% of cows in the US. According to a 2008 study by the National Research Council, it takes just 843,000 modified cows to garner the milk yield of 1 million untreated cows, which saves 2.3 metric tons of cattle feed and 540,000 acres of land to grow other crops. However, these numbers are debatable. However, whenever cows are forced to produce more milk, they become more prone to udder infections. This is a condition that has the potential to increase the amount of cow's pus, which ends up in the milk that we use and drink every day. It has been said that their products, such as GMOs, are an endangerment to the human society and health. According to the Center for Food Safety, a numerous amount of studies over the past years have showed us that genetically engineered foods can cause serious risks to humans, domesticated animals, wildlife, and the environment. Human health effects can include higher risks of toxicity, allergenicity, antibiotic resistance, immune suppression, and cancer. However, very few definitive studies have been carried out, and very little is known about the possible health risks, either short-term or long-term. Foreign genetic material in a host can cause other genetic material in that host to behave erratically. Genes can be suppressed or overexpressed, causing a wide variety of results. One consequence of overexpression, for example, can be cancer. Nutritional problems can also result from the transfer. In one example, cows that ate Roundup-ready soybeans produced milk with more fat in it. In another example, milk from cows injected with a genetically engineered growth hormone was found by a number of researchers, including those published in the journal Lancet, to have substantially higher levels of a compound known as insulin-like growth factor 1, which is linked to human breast, colon, and prostate cancers. The milk also has higher levels of bovine growth hormones in it, along with pus and sometimes antibiotics. GM crops have been linked to health problems as diverse as reproductive damage and cancer to Alzheimer's disease and diabetes.
So despite the health risks surrounding Monsanto and its control over our food supply, why don't we hear more about it? How are we protected? And how do they get away with manufacturing and distributing this genetically modified food? Well, there's several reasons we don't hear more about this and why consumers don't know about these things being in their food. Monsanto receives federal funding to do research and development on GE and GMO food. But Monsanto has to comply with the FDA and USDA in order to get their products out to consumers, correct? Well, that's where things get a little bit tricky. Monsanto is notorious for having government connections, especially with the FDA.
There has been this revolving door between Monsanto's corporate offices and the various regulatory and judicial bodies that have made the key decisions.
Justice Clarence Thomas was a Monsanto attorney. That wouldn't be such a big deal if it weren't for one court case that really decided this whole seed-saving issue. Justice Clarence Thomas wrote the majority opinion in a case that allowed these companies to prevent farmers from saving their own seed.
Monsanto had very close ties to the Bush administration and the Clinton administration.
And this goes to why we haven't had much political debate over this radical change to our food system.
The last 25 years, our government has been dominated by the industries that it was meant to be regulating.
The challenge is sometimes you have people with expertise in industry that may turn out to be really good regulators. It's really about what interests they decide to represent.
You're talking about power, centralized power, and that power is being used against the people who are really producing the food, like the farmers. It's being used against the workers who work for these companies, and it's being used against consumers who are deliberately being kept in the dark about what they're eating, where it comes from, and what it's doing to their bodies.
Currently, over 40 industrialized countries require the labeling of GMOs, including Australia, Japan, and the European Union. The US is far behind the status quo, even though multiple shows have shown that the majority of Americans are in favor of labeling. In addition to enacting labeling laws, certain countries have placed outright bans on the planting of GMO crops. Ireland, Switzerland, New Zealand, Austria, Sri Lanka, Greece, Hungary, and Bulgaria are among the countries where no GMO is permitted to take root. Several initiatives in the United States have come to light, but none have passed. A recent bill in California gained headway. However, the financial support of its opponents were that of a 5-to-1 ratio, and they constantly ran ads that misinformed voters. And while there are so many topics concerning Monsanto's unethical actions, we can't really cover them all in this video. But there's one that is extremely recent and extremely important. In more recent actions, Monsanto has effectively protected itself from any litigation while ensuring its products will be passed. This happened recently when the government almost shut down. Referred to as the Farmer Assurance Provision, Section 735, slipped its way into the continuing resolution. This section of the bill requires the USDA to approve the sale of GMO crops even if environmental studies were ruled inadequate by a court and the seeds were shown to be unhealthy. To provide a somewhat comedic look at the act itself, here's a clip of Jon Stewart from The Daily Show.
Buried deep within the pages of that bill is a controversial piece of legislation that would keep the federal government from banning the sale of genetically modified food.
What the hell? What? Wait, what? Actually, they're slightly overselling this. It doesn't keep the federal government from banning these genetically modified foods. It just says that if there's a court challenge or an injunction on the selling of these genetically modified foods, the Department of Agriculture has to allow a company like Monsanto, if they want, to continue selling the genetically modified crop. Let's at least then hear some of Congress's no doubt robust discussion on this controversial amendment.
Critics are angry about how it was passed, snuck into a huge agricultural bill without review by a committee.
Wait, someone just attached this language protecting genetically modified food makers into a bigger, unrelated bill. There's 535 people in Congress. How do they even let something like this happen?
The law passed without most of Congress even knowing about it.
Congress didn't know about a law they themselves passed. So Congress is now operating with the same level of self-awareness as a flatulent grandpa. What? What? Where's everybody going? What's that? If only one lawmaker had called out the so-called Monsanto amendment publicly, brought it to the attention of the other lawmakers, say a senator from Montana, John Tester.
The second provision sent over from the House tells the USDA to ignore any judicial ruling regarding the planting of genetically modified crops. These provisions are giveaways, pure and simple. They deserve no place in this bill. We simply have got to do a better job on both policy and process.
Oh, I see the problem here. The other legislators didn't know about it because Senator Tester brought it up on the Senate floor. In front of all of them. Perhaps if he had written it in the memo field of a Monsanto lobbyist check, people would have seen it.
Sometimes it can be hard to hear all this negative information about a global company and think, but how does this directly affect me? Monsanto is in every grocery store or restaurant that people go to on a day-to-day basis. Specifically, for us in Tennessee, it affects us just as much as the rest of the world. Monsanto is based in St. Louis, Missouri. Since Missouri borders Tennessee, it is very evident at their presence here, especially in Union City, where their Tennessee office is located. Searching on Facebook for Monsanto groups, there are Millions Against Monsanto Facebook groups for pretty much every state. There is a Millions Against Monsanto Tennessee, a Millions Against Monsanto Middle Tennessee, Millions Against Monsanto Red Boiling Springs, Tennessee, and a Millions Against Monsanto Memphis. On these sites, they post information about Monsanto as well as the upcoming events that are going on in the area for people to get involved in, and also just to get the word out about what Monsanto is doing. The Sierra Club of Middle Tennessee had a presentation back on March 14th of this year in Nashville to discuss the dangers of GMOs and how they can affect your family's health. Recently, a woman in Franklin, Tennessee started a petition to require that the plants and seeds that are sold in Tennessee must be labeled as open-pollinated, genetically modified, or hybridized seeds. These seeds should be labeled so the customers know if their seeds are natural or not. A recent article stated that the largest awareness of Monsanto and the largest impact with genetically modified seeds in Tennessee has been reported to be at the local garden shops. There has also been an increase in the amount of do-it-yourself worm tanks so that families can now do their own composting and stay away from hidden GMOs as much as possible. GMO-Free Tennessee is a group that represents Tennessee in the Coalition of States for the Mandatory Labeling of Genetically Modified Organisms. Their goal is to educate the people of Tennessee on the effects of GMO on our food source and our bodies. They are also working toward GMO labeling legislature in Tennessee. A local Tennessee farmer was questioned on his thoughts against Monsanto. He had bought bell pepper seeds which grew into delicious peppers one year. After that season, they dried out the seeds and stored them until they needed to be planted again next season. When they planted them the following year, the peppers grew very slowly. Instead of the peppers that they thought they had planted, a plant called pokeweed grew. Pokeweed leaves have to be boiled 3 times just to remove all the toxins from them. Many authorities advise against eating these leaves, also known as poke salad down in the South. When Monsanto is genetically modifying these seeds and other foods, it is creating something that will not naturally occur in nature. One seed that produced a delicious pepper one year grew a poisonous plant the next year because of the GMOs that had been injected in that seed. So now that we have talked about how it affects Tennessee, let's touch on the fact that has most likely affected every viewer out there. GMOs have been found in our beloved Girl Scout cookies. When the Girl Scout organization addressed their use of GMO ingredients, they said, "The baking staff has the ability to determine whether to use genetically modified agricultural crops in Girl Scout cookies. The decision is based on a range of market-related factors." The Girl Scouts released a note also saying that the group feels that everything that goes into the cookies are safe, including the GMO ingredients. When thinking of how many people consume Girl Scout cookies and how many young girls are a part of this organization, it is evident that we need to make strides to stop the unethical practices that Monsanto is doing and the toxins they are allowing us to put in our bodies. It is important for all of us to do what we can to protect the youth of the world, and that starts right here at home. It starts with getting the information out there first and foremost. When people are aware of the disadvantages, they can make a more educated decision on what they are putting into their bodies. By joining any of the Millions Against Monsanto Facebook groups, you can get the information out to people that are not aware. Also, there is an event on May 25th called March Against Monsanto in Nashville. It is another way to get the information out, as well as show Monsanto how many people are truly concerned about the harmful side effects that are coming from consuming their products. Also, go to www.change.org to sign the petition so all foods containing GMOs in Tennessee must be labeled. Consumers also need to pay attention to what they are eating, especially because GMOs are not required to be labeled yet. Consumers should try and eat organic as much as possible. And also support your local farmers markets, but make sure to ask if the farmers know if the seeds could in any way contain GMOs.